I'm not a believer of the paranormal. Or, well, I thought I wasn't. After this situation about 2 years ago in southwestern Pennsylvania, some things are particularly difficult to dismiss as abysmal. For the most part, I've only kept this story to myself. I didn't want anyone to think I was crazy or just blatantly lying. I was riding my new motorcycle through the backwoods about 30 minutes away from where I live. A midnight black Harley for a cool midnight ride. I was taking a detour I wasn't really familiar with, so I was using a GPS mounted on my handlebars. Eventually, as much as I wish I could hold it in, I had to make a stop in the middle of the desolate dark woods and take a bio break. So I parked my bike off the side of the road at the corner and walked to the edge of the wood line. However, when doing so, I heard something that I still hear to this day. A long and drawn-out female screaming from within the forest behind me, past the opposite side of the road. I quickly fixed my attire and spun around, fully expecting to see someone only feet away with how proximal the scream was. Even beneath my armored riding jacket, I could feel my goosebumps develop and hair stand straight. Nothing but silence as cold as the forest depths had followed. Nothing was making any sounds. There were no crickets, no birds, no owls, just pure isolation. After what seemed like an eternity, I was starting to doubt my own conscience, thinking I wasn't even hearing anything to begin with. Whenever I sat back down on my motorcycle, I wanted to just speed away and leave whatever that sound was behind, imagination or not. As soon as I went to hit the ignition, this time the scream was unmistakable. It was definitely someone screaming in the woods bloody murder. Most normal people, even sane people, would have instantly taken off. However, something inside of me was triggered by the event. After all, I was a fireman and a soldier who was on leave. I felt it was somewhat my duty to at least make a vague attempt to discover the source. Fighting my urges to flee, I grabbed my cell phone and left towards the woods. There was a large amount of brush mixed with the foliage that made traversing the cold, muddy, steep hillside almost impossible. If it wasn't for my riding boots and digging my gloves into the dirt, I doubt I even would have made it up the hill. "Hello? I'm here to help. I'm a fireman," I yelled out into the forest while making my way up the hillside. Nothing. No response. Once all the way up the path, I found a slightly trotted path that leads to a tunnel I never even knew had existed. Once I approached the tunnel entrance, I used my light from my cell phone to illuminate the area. Surprisingly, railroad tracks that seemed to rise out of the dirt ran along the inside. It must have been an old railway tunnel I never even knew had existed in the first place. I don't know why. Hell, I don't even think it's reasonable. But curiosity took hold and I made my way into the tunnel. It was so dark my cell phone's flashlight couldn't even illuminate more than 20 feet in front of me. My boots were splashing along in the tunnel, occasional damp areas every 50 yards inside. This is where things became, well, twisted. Eventually, I started noticing foreign splashing sounds. I thought maybe at first it was my echo, so I stopped dead in my tracks. I listened. I listened and listened and listened until finally, wet footsteps could be heard. It almost sounded like wet feet being slapped against something. The sound was coming from ahead of me, still slightly distant. Even aiming my light directly down the tracks, I couldn't see anything. With the air growing even colder than it already was around me, my breath was shaking while I listened. In a few brief moments, my cell phone light suddenly began to fail and go out. As soon as I heard the footsteps becoming a bull rush towards me, I let out a surprised yell that can only be described as a grunt and dashed back towards the entrance of the tunnel. I didn't look back and sprinted as fast as I could, still hearing those wet footsteps trailing me closer and closer. I didn't even stop when I hit the entrance. I slid down the hillside on the side of my legs and hip to get to the bottom. I was moving non-stop as quickly as I thought possible. Even as big of a run for my life I was in, I stopped cold in my tracks as soon as I arrived at the road. My bike was gone. Or at least it was moved about 30 yards down the road from the corner I parked it at. There was no way someone could have moved it. Even the keys were still in the ignition since I forgot about them. If someone moved it, not only did they not start it, but they could have easily stolen it as well. Here is the part I will never forget. From where my bike was originally to where it had moved were fresh, wet footprints on the road. Not boot prints or shoe prints, but bare feet marks. I couldn't even comprehend the situation and didn't even remotely attempt to understand it. I dashed for my bike, hopped on, and practically started it as soon as my bottom touched the seat and then took off. As I made my way through the sharp twists and bends of the back road, I felt something heavy on the passenger seat of my bike, as if something was sitting right behind me. A cold, wet hand could be felt tightly gripping around my armored shoulder from my jacket. I could even feel long nails. I didn't look back. I couldn't look back. There was zero chance I was going to take my eyes off the road from how fast I was racing down it. As soon as I cleared the woods, all of that foreign weight seemed to be lifted from my bike, and even that grip left my shoulder. That was a detour to a bar I'm never going to take again. Ever. Or so my dumb self thought. After telling one of my closest friends about the story, he immediately wanted to go see this supposed tunnel as soon as possible. For a while I declined until I finally gave in. It had to wait until my next leave from the army. So, 6 months later when my leave came back, we made our way to the same exact location, but this time during the day. We parked our motorcycles and made our way up the hillside. Here is where things get weird. The path seemed to curve directly away from where the tunnel was, only being a grassy hillside there. It was gone. I knew for a fact that this was the exact point where it was before. My friend and I searched probably a 400 square yard area for this entrance. Nothing. We checked the local geographical maps. Nothing. We checked the railroad indexes. Nothing. We checked the tunnel indexes. Nothing. There was zero evidence this place even existed to begin with. The closest thing nearby was a long abandoned bridge. So, a few days later, I asked one of my friends from a fire department near there about that bridge. He told me a story where a couple was riding a dirt bike across that bridge, but somehow they ended up wrecking into the side of it, sending the passenger who sat directly behind the rider over the bridge's edge and falling to her death in the water below. He asked why I wanted to know, but I just told him I was curious about it since I saw it one day. I knew I couldn't tell him of that story. To this day, I still feel like a bit of a coward. I fled for my life whenever I originally thought someone else's was in jeopardy. I never found out if anyone really had gone missing there, or worse. It remains a mystery to me this very day. That cold, wet hand gripping my shoulder when I rode off, those wet footsteps chasing me, the wet footprints guiding directly from point A to point B from where my bike was, the screams. Nothing added up to me, and I've yet to figure any of these things out. I love the great outdoors. You wouldn't catch me outside in the dead of night, but I am practically a forest ranger in the daytime. I was even more adventurous in my youth, and my sister and I would often be allowed to traverse the woods and the lands my parents and uncles owned. In retrospect, this is surprising given all of the strange and scary stories we were told about odd sightings in those woods. This story adds to that list, I was a strange kid, for various reasons, but I won't get into that in this story. The elderly in my community would say that children, like animals, are sensitive to energies around them, so they often pick up on things that others cannot. In my case, I was drawn to our family graveyard. I do not know why, other than the fact that it was basically an energetic playground. Like a patchwork quilt, the large spaces had some areas feeling energetically invigorating, places that feel comfortable, and areas that feel not so safe. If I ever felt the desire to go to the places that had the vibes I was slightly unsure about, I would try to convince my father or sister to come with me. Yeah, I guess you could say that sometimes I like to dance with the devil. Quite literally so in some of my experiences. Anyway, one particularly lazy summer afternoon, my dad's sister and I walked to the family graveyard to study the tombstones. I wanted to venture down an overgrown, forgotten trail located in the forestry behind the graveyard, a place that we were all uneasy about. This day, the energy there towards the back of the graveyard didn't feel so heavy, and with great luck I had convinced both my father and my sister to accompany me. They gave a light-hearted sigh of frustration as they followed me to the edge of the graveyard. Once I reached the entrance of the trail, I stopped in my tracks. It felt like a thick wall of energy stood before me, repelling me from going any further. I was intimidated, but determined to commit to my adventure. So I waited for my family to catch up and let my father lead the way. We honestly didn't get far, probably 3 or 4 meters before, in a clear patch of grass to our right, we happened upon a strange and unsettling sight. There, lying sprawled out on an old tire, was some peculiar animal. It looked like a large version of those novelty primates with long legs and arms with Velcro attached to its hands. People would often hang them from their rearview mirrors in the dash of their cars. Except this thing was not a toy, and it was clearly dead. Its fur was white as snow and was scattered everywhere as if it was strangled to death. Out of petrified curiosity, I took one step forward to get a closer look at its face, but all I could see was its snapped neck. Its head must have been lying limp behind the tire. My father did not let us stay any longer to investigate. We heard a shrill cry down the trail, further into the woods, and my father quickly ushered us out of there, and we briskly made our way home. We tried explaining what we saw to my aunts and uncles, but just like many of our creepy tales, they dismissed our sightings as nothing more than an illusion or an overactive imagination. You'd think differently of an extended family whose backyard belongs to Bigfoot. But what did I know? I was just a kid. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And if you would like to help support the channel, make sure you check out the Patron link in the description below. But if you do become a patron, make sure you wait till like the 1st, because it's going to charge you as soon as you sign up, and it will charge you again on the 1st. So if you're doing it at the end of a month, you're going to get double charged, which I wish it didn't do. So the best I can do is try to give everyone a heads up. But you can get some cool perks over in Patreon, so we'd love to have you over there, including an exclusive Discord and exclusive streams. Regardless, make sure if you don't want to get double charged, you wait till the 1st. I appreciate you checking out this video, and I will catch you in the next one. And just remember to watch your back, because you never know who or what is watching. Bad bye. I haven't said that outro in a very long time.